Don't be so quick to head to the supermarket when you crave fresh fruit, because exactly what you need could be growing just outside your door. If you think cultivating an orchard requires a massive plot of land, think again. All you need is a single container to build your own backyard oasis. Today, I will reveal the ultimate list of 15 high-yield dwarf fruit trees for container gardening. 15 plants, 15 bountiful harvests, 15 explosive flavors perfectly tailored to transform your patio into a thriving botanical powerhouse. Kicking off our high-yielding backyard orchard at number 15 is the spectacular dwarf Cavendish banana. While traditional banana plants tower at 20 bhf, this specific genetic mutation stops at just 6 ft, making it the ultimate tropical heavyweight for container gardening. Because this plant develops an immense fleshy underground corm and carries a heavy canopy of gigantic leaves, you absolutely must use a heavy-duty 15-gallon hard plastic pot to prevent the wind from completely toppling it over. Fill this colossal container with a slightly acidic, extremely rich potting soil, heavily amended with thick organic compost, and perlite for excellent drainage. You do not grow bananas from seeds. Instead, you must purchase a live, rooted vegetative pup or sucker from a certified nursery to guarantee a true-to-type clone. Place the container in the absolute hottest, most blistering full-sun location your patio can offer. Bananas consist of nearly 80% water, meaning your watering schedule must be relentless. You must heavily drench the soil every single day during the summer heat, never allowing the root zone to dry out. Feed it every 2 weeks with a specialized fertilizer heavily loaded with potassium and nitrogen. The harvest time tests your patience, typically requiring 12 to 15 months of uninterrupted growth. Once the gigantic purple flower drops and the thick cluster of green bananas begins to swell and show a slight yellow tint, use a sharp machete to slice the entire stalk right off the plant. Hang the stalk in your kitchen to ripen fully, transforming your home into a tropical oasis. Use the intensely sweet fruits for gourmet smoothies or dense banana bread. According to detailed agricultural research published by the University of Florida IFAS Extension, the banana tree is not biologically a tree at all. It is technically the world's largest perennial herb, possessing no actual woody trunk, but rather a false stem called a pseudostem, made entirely of tightly packed leaves. Here is a fascinating fact. Because Cavendish bananas contain extraordinarily high concentrated levels of the isotope potassium-40, they are physically, measurably radioactive to the point where commercial shipping crates of bananas frequently trigger false alarms in highly sensitive radiation detectors at international ports. At number 14 is the breathtaking dragon fruit, scientifically known as Hylocereus undatus. This strange vining tropical cactus produces enormous neon pink alien-looking fruits and is absolutely tailor-made to be a high-yielding container monster on your patio. Because it is a heavy active climbing cactus, you must use a substantial wide 15-gallon heavy plastic pot. Crucially, you must securely bury a towering 4ft wooden post directly into the center of the dirt to physically support the vines as they climb. Fill the pot with a top-tier sandy cactus and succulent mix, as heavy potting soil will rot the cactus instantly. You can easily grow this by purchasing a live cutting, allowing the cutting to dry and heal for a week, and pressing it directly into the dry soil. Place the container in blazing, unrelenting sunlight. Keep the soil slightly moist during the brutal summer heat, but strictly bone-dry during winter to prevent fungal diseases. Feed it generously every 2 weeks with a high-phosphorus liquid bloom booster to trigger the spectacular flower. Arriving in late summer, the large green buds will suddenly explode into dinner plate-sized white flowers. Once pollinated, The base swells into a heavy neon pink fruit. Harvest by firmly twisting the ripe fruit until it snaps off the vine. In the kitchen, slice the alien fruit in half and scoop out the sweet, refreshing seed-speckled flesh with a spoon. According to botanical research from the University of California Cooperative Extension, the breathtaking white flowers of the dragon fruit are strictly nocturnal. They physically wait for the sun to completely set, before forcefully bursting open in the dark to specifically attract their primary biological pollinators, large nectar-feeding bats. Here is a fascinating fact. If you lack giant bats on your patio, the colossal flower will physically die and fall off by mid-morning, unless you wake up before dawn and use a small makeup brush to manually transfer the pollen yourself. Coming in at number 13 is the highly exotic star fruit, specifically the dwarf Hawaiian carambola. This spectacular tropical evergreen tree produces abundant clusters of waxy yellow fruit and thrives brilliantly as a highly productive patio container specimen. Because this tree develops a wide, thirsty root system, you must select a large 15-gallon heavy-duty plastic pot to retain deep, consistent soil moisture and prevent wind damage. Fill the container with a high-quality, slightly acidic, heavily composted potting soil that holds water efficiently but readily drains excess out the bottom. You must purchase a grafted dwarf nursery tree, as growing from seed guarantees highly unpredictable wild genetics that may never fruit. Place the container in an incredibly bright, full-sun location, but ensure it is completely protected from harsh backyard winds. Star fruit trees are relentless tropical drinkers. You must water the container heavily and frequently, ensuring the root zone never completely dries out, especially during fruit set. Feed it consistently every 4 weeks with a balanced organic liquid fertilizer to fuel its heavy blooming. The harvest time is incredibly rewarding, as a mature dwarf tree can produce multiple abundant flushes of fruit throughout late summer and autumn. You must wait until the deep green ridges turn entirely golden yellow before snapping them off the heavy branches. Slice the fruit horizontally to reveal perfect edible yellow stars that taste like a crisp blend of green apples and sweet grapes, perfect for luxury salads. A rigorous medical review published in the Clinical Kidney Journal explicitly warns that star fruit contains concentrated levels of the neurotoxin caramboxin, which is entirely harmless to healthy humans, but scientifically proven to be fatal to patients with severe chronic kidney disease. Here is a fascinating fact. The compound leaves of the star fruit tree exhibit a biological phenomenon called nastic. When the sun sets, the leaves physically fold themselves up tightly in a sleep position, completely reopening only when morning sunlight returns. Sliding into number 12 is the dwarf mango, specifically focusing on ultra-compact varieties like the Pickering or Condo mango. The idea of growing a towering tropical mango tree in a backyard pot seems completely insane, but these genetically compact trees are specifically engineered for tremendous patio yields. Because mango trees develop a long, vigorous taproot, you absolutely must use a deep, heavy-duty, 15-gallon plastic pot to provide downward space and extreme structural stability. Fill the pot with a highly aerated, well-draining citrus or palm soil mix heavily amended with pumice. You must completely avoid planting mango seeds from the grocery store, as they will grow into 60 ft trees. You must purchase a grafted dwarf tree. Place the pot in the most blistering, sweltering, full-sun location possible. Mangoes despise wet feet. Practice strict watering discipline, allowing the soil to dry out significantly between deep soakings to prevent root rot. Feed it monthly with a high-potassium organic fertilizer to fuel the panicles. Arriving in the agonizing heat of late summer, the tremendous fruits are ready to harvest when their skin blushes with vibrant red and yellow hues and emits an intoxicating sweet tropical perfume. Use sharp shears to cut the thick stem. Dice the buttery, fiberless orange flesh into a spicy backyard salsa, or blend it into a first-class smoothie. A detailed botanical profile published by the University of Florida Tropical Research and Education Center states that mango trees exhibit alternate bearing, meaning a heavy harvest of fruit one summer naturally chemically suppresses the tree, resulting in a significantly lighter harvest the following year. Here is a fascinating fact. Biologically speaking, the mango tree belongs to the Anacardiaceae plant family, making it a direct botanical cousin to poison ivy. The thick sap found in the stems and unripe skin contains a highly potent chemical called urushiol, which can trigger severe blistering allergic skin reactions. Number 11 brings us the spectacular dwarf everbearing mulberry. Most people actively avoid mulberries because standard trees grow 40 feet tall and completely destroy concrete foundations. But this specific dwarf mutation is an absolute container superstar that produces buckets of sweet berries. You must select a large 15-gallon fabric grow bag for this plant. The breathable fabric forces the vigorous root system to naturally air prune, keeping the tree permanently dwarfed. Fill the bag with a rich, loamy, compost-heavy potting soil. Start this plant by purchasing a dormant bare root cutting and burying it halfway into the soil during early spring. Place the container in full, blazing backyard sun. Mulberries are relentless drinkers when fruiting. You must water the grow bag deeply every single day during the summer heat to ensure the berries become incredibly plump and juicy, rather than dry. Feed it every 4 weeks with a balanced organic liquid fertilizer. Unlike standard trees that fruit just once a year, this dwarf variety produces continuous, explosive waves of sweet, blackberry-like fruit from late spring until the very first winter frost. Gently pull the dark purple berries. If perfectly ripe, they detach with zero resistance. Eat them raw, bake them into rich summer pies, or boil them down into thick jam. A comprehensive agricultural review published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry scientifically verified that dark mulberries contain concentrated levels of resveratrol, the exact same heart-protecting, anti-aging antioxidant found in high-quality red wine. Here is a fascinating fact. The leaves of the mulberry tree are the absolute exclusive diet of the Bombyx mori caterpillar, commonly known as the silkworm. Without this specific botanical genus, the entire global multi-billion-dollar ancient silk industry would instantly collapse, as they will literally starve to death before eating anything else. At number 10 is the dwarf bush cherry. Forget the towering giant cherry trees that take a decade to fruit. Modern agricultural breeding has produced magnificent shrub-like dwarf cherries that yield incredible amounts of top-quality fruit right in backyard containers. Because the root system is surprisingly shallow and highly fibrous, a wide 7-gallon fabric grow bag is the absolute perfect choice to ensure maximum oxygenation. Fill the container with a slightly acidic, heavily composted potting soil mixed with coarse sand for superior drainage. Watering requires strict attention. As the white blossoms drop and green fruit sets, the soil must be kept consistently, deeply moist to prevent the plant from aborting its fruit. Apply a slow-release organic fertilizer just once in early spring. The harvest time is remarkably fast, usually arriving in the peak of midsummer. These dense bushes max out at just 4 ft tall, meaning you can easily cover the entire pot with a bird net and harvest the dark crimson-red cherries by hand from the comfort of a patio chair. These tart, complex cherries are the undisputed kings of baking, creating the most intense, rich, deep red cherry pies you will ever taste. A comprehensive nutritional study published in the Journal of Nutrition scientifically proved that tart cherries contain extraordinarily high natural concentrations of exogenous melatonin, significantly enhancing human sleep quality and effectively curing chronic insomnia when consumed before bed. Here is a fascinating fact. Unlike almost all traditional sweet cherry trees that absolutely require you to plant a second, completely different cherry tree nearby for cross-pollination, these specific dwarf bush cherries are biologically engineered to be 100% self-fruitful. Coming in at number 9 is the dwarf blueberry. Growing blueberries directly in backyard dirt is notoriously difficult because of their extreme soil requirements, making container growing the ultimate biological cheat code for this high-yielding antioxidant powerhouse. Because blueberry roots are incredibly fine, shallow, and highly prone to suffocation, you absolutely must use a 5-gallon breathable fabric grow bag. Standard potting dirt will kill this bush instantly. You must use a highly specialized, extremely acidic soil mix composed primarily of pure peat moss and pine bark fines, explicitly maintaining a pH between 4.0 and 5.0. Purchase a 2-year-old bare root plant and place it in full direct sunlight. You must water this bush religiously every single day during the scorching summer, strictly using collected rainwater, as the alkaline calcium in municipal tap water will completely destroy the soil's critical acidity. Fertilize it twice a season with an acid-loving organic feed intended for azaleas. Arriving in midsummer, the bush will be completely covered in small, bell-shaped white flowers that magically transform into plump, dusty blueberries. Hand-pick the berries only when they easily roll off the stem into your palm without pulling. These sweet, tart berries are perfect for baking artisanal muffins or folding into morning oatmeal. A decades-long health study published by the Harvard School of Public Health definitively proved that the profound concentration of anthocyanins, the actual biological pigment making them blue, significantly delays cognitive decline and physically protects the human brain against the onset of Alzheimer's disease. Here is a fascinating fact. True blueberries are one of the only commercially grown food crops on the entire planet that are completely, strictly native to North America. Indigenous Native American tribes fiercely guarded wild patches, using the crushed berries to dye their sacred garments. Number 8 brings us the spectacular dwarf thornless blackberry. Traditional blackberry brambles are terrifying, aggressive, thorn-covered monsters that will quickly take over an entire backyard. But this spectacular genetic dwarf stays perfectly compact, is completely thornless, and yields a bountiful harvest. Because it naturally grows as a dense, low-spreading bush rather than a sprawling vining cane, a wide 5-gallon heavy plastic pot is the absolute perfect container. Fill the pot with a top-tier, slightly acidic, highly aerated potting soil, heavily amended with peat moss and rich compost. Purchase a bare root dormant plant from a certified nursery and plant it deeply in early spring. Place the container in an area receiving full direct sunlight for at least 8 hours a day. Blackberries are incredibly thirsty plants when actively producing fruit. You must water the container deeply and relentlessly, ensuring the soil never dries out during the blistering heat of summer. Feed it monthly with a balanced organic liquid fertilizer to fuel the heavy flower clusters. Arriving in midsummer, the dense bush will be heavily loaded with exceptionally plump jet black berries. Because there are absolutely zero thorns, you can confidently harvest the huge berries bare-handed without shedding a single drop of blood. These intensely sweet, complex berries are the ultimate ingredient for dark artisan summer jams and rich cobblers. A rigorous clinical study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry proved that the dark black pigment in these specific berries contains powerful anthocyanins that actively cross the blood-brain barrier, physically reversing age-related motor and cognitive decline. Here is a fascinating fact. Biologically speaking, a blackberry is not actually a true berry. It is scientifically classified as an aggregate fruit, meaning each individual juicy bump on the surface is technically a complete separate tiny fruit containing its own microscopic seed. At number 7, we have the magnificent calamandan, often called the calamansi. This stunning miniature citrus tree is an absolute powerhouse of fruit production, capable of yielding hundreds of tiny bright orange fruits simultaneously on a tiny balcony patio. Because citrus roots despise standing water and demand heavy oxygenation, a 10-gallon highly breathable fabric grow bag is the perfect container, naturally air pruning the roots and preventing deadly fungal rot. Fill the bag with a specialized rapidly draining citrus and cactus soil, mix heavily diluted with coarse sand and pine bark. Growing from seed takes nearly 5 years to fruit, so purchasing a grafted nursery sapling is strictly mandatory. Place the container in at least 8 uninterrupted hours of blazing direct sunlight. Your watering strategy must explicitly rely on the wet and dry cycle. Soak the bag completely, then absolutely refuse to water it again until the top 3 in are completely bone dry. Feed it every 6 weeks with an iron-rich granular citrus fertilizer. The harvest time is truly incredible because calamandans are true ever-bearing trees, constantly producing highly fragrant white blossoms and ripe fruit 365 days a year. Harvest with sharp snips when they turn a vibrant deep orange. In the kitchen, generously squeeze the highly acidic aromatic juice over grilled seafood. A comprehensive horticultural study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry verified that the peel contains extraordinarily high concentrations of D-limonene, actively lowering human blood sugar levels and effectively suppressing acute systemic inflammation. Here is a fascinating fact. The calamandan possesses a bizarre inverted biological flavor profile. The brilliant orange skin is shockingly sweet, while the inner juice is violently sour. The proper way to eat it raw is to pop the entire unpeeled fruit into your mouth to perfectly balance the extremes. Number 6 is the majestic kumquat tree, specifically the cold, hardy Nagami variety. This tiny, elegant evergreen tree produces an absolute explosion of elongated, bright orange citrus fruits and is specifically engineered by nature to thrive and yield heavily in cramped containers. You must plant it in a deep 7-gallon heavy plastic pot to firmly protect its sensitive taproot from sudden temperature drops during the autumn months. Fill the pot with a specialized, slightly acidic citrus mix that balances moisture retention with rapid drainage. Buy a live grafted tree from a certified nursery. Place it in a location receiving full, unshaded sunlight from dawn until dusk. Kumquats are incredibly thirsty when actively setting fruit. You must water deeply every 3 days during summer, ensuring the drainage holes are never blocked by patio debris. Apply a specialized zinc and magnesium-heavy citrus fertilizer once every 2 months. The harvest time occurs right in the dead of winter, providing a spectacular, brilliant burst of fresh fruit when the rest of your garden is completely dormant and frozen. Harvest by meticulously snipping the fruits individually to avoid tearing the delicate branches. Slice them incredibly thin to make artisanal bittersweet marmalades or candy them whole in heavy sugar syrup. A major botanical profile published by the University of California, Riverside dictates that eating the high-fiber peel directly along with the juice highly stimulates digestion and nutrient absorption. Here is a fascinating fact. The kumquat tree is scientifically proven to be the most cold-hardy of all commercially grown citrus species on the entire planet. While a standard orange tree dies instantly in freezing temperatures, a mature kumquat enters deep biological dormancy, physically surviving brutal temperatures, plunging down to 18°F without sustaining any permanent cellular damage. Taking the number 5 spot is the spectacular dwarf guava, specifically ultra-compact varieties like Ruby Supreme. This incredible fast-growing tropical shrub produces a tremendous abundance of intensely sweet, aromatic fruits and is perfectly tailored for explosive yields in a backyard container. Because it naturally grows as a dense, wide-spreading bush, you must use a 10-gallon, highly breathable fabric grow bag to effectively air-prune the roots and stop them from choking the pot. Fill the bag with a rich, well-draining standard potting mix, heavily amended with organic worm castings and coarse sand. Always purchase a rooted cutting or grafted tree, as seed-grown guavas are notoriously unreliable in fruit quality. Place the container in the most blistering, sun-drenched corner of your patio, as guavas absolutely require extreme heat to develop their high sugar content. During the peak summer, water the fabric bag heavily every 2 days to ensure the fruit swells. Apply a heavy phosphorus-rich organic granular fertilizer early in spring. Arriving in late summer through autumn, you will know the fruits are perfectly ripe when the green skin blushes to a bright pale yellow, and your entire patio is filled with a ridiculously strong, sweet, musky perfume. Hand-pick the soft fruits individually, slice them in half, and eat the bright pink flesh, seeds and all, or thoroughly blend them into a thick, luxurious tropical juice. A comprehensive nutritional analysis published by the USDA scientifically confirms that a single raw guava contains nearly 4 times the amount of pure vitamin C as a large orange, making it an ultimate immune-boosting superfruit. Here is a fascinating fact. The thick-veined leaves of the guava tree possess such extraordinarily powerful antibacterial properties that herbalists in South America routinely crush the raw foliage and pack it directly into open bleeding wounds to instantly stop hemorrhaging and prevent severe infections. Breaking into the top 4 is the magnificent pineapple. Most people falsely assume you need a vast, sprawling plantation to grow these, but the pineapple is actually a remarkably compact bromeliad that produces an exquisite tropical fruit in a tiny backyard container. Because the root system is surprisingly tiny and incredibly shallow, a wide 5-gallon unglazed terracotta pot is the absolute perfect choice to ensure the soil dries out rapidly. Fill the pot with an incredibly poor, sandy, cactus-like potting mix, heavily choked with perlite. You do not need seeds. Simply twist the spiky green crown off a fresh grocery store pineapple, strip the bottom leaves to expose the root nodes, and press it directly into the damp sand. Place the pot in the hottest sun-drenched corner of your patio. You must completely allow the soil to become utterly bone-dry between deep waterings, or the central core will rot instantly. Apply a liquid organic fertilizer directly into the central cup of the spiky leaves every 2 months. The harvest takes 2 to 3 grueling years to produce a single fruit. Eventually, a beautiful stalk will rise, producing a gorgeous golden pineapple. Wait until the spiky skin turns entirely bright yellow, and the intense aroma fills your patio, before using a heavy serrated knife to chop it off the stalk. Grill the thick rings for a gourmet backyard barbecue side dish. A biochemical study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirms the raw core contains highly concentrated levels of bromelain, a remarkably powerful proteolytic enzyme proven to physically digest complex human proteins and significantly speed up surgical healing. Here is a fascinating fact. Because of that flesh-eating bromelain enzyme, when you're eating a bowl of raw pineapple, the powerful biological enzymes inside the fruit are literally actively digesting the microscopic flesh of your tongue and cheeks right back. Coming in at number 3 is the dwarf pomegranate, scientifically known as Punica granatum nana. This magnificent ancient shrub produces spectacular, fiery red, trumpet-shaped flowers, followed by hundreds of miniature jewel-filled crimson fruits, all while staying incredibly compact. Because it naturally thrives in rocky, completely barren landscapes, you must select a heavy, unglazed 5-gallon terracotta pot to rapidly draw out excess moisture away from the root zone. You must fill the pot with a highly alkaline, desert-style cactus mix, heavily choked with crushed gravel and agricultural pumice. While propagating from hardwood cuttings is preferred, you can actually grow this from the fruit seeds pressed into damp sand, though you must wait 3 years for fruit. Place the heavy terracotta pot in the most punishing, blistering, full-sun environment available. Treat it exactly like a desert survivor. Let the pot dry out completely, almost until the leaves droop, before unleashing a heavy deluge of water. A single handful of organic bone meal in early spring fuels the abundant flower production. Arriving in late autumn, the small, leathery red orbs will begin to physically split open directly on the branch. Snip them off, break open the bitter rind, and extract the brilliant ruby-red arils. Crush them to extract pure, antioxidant-rich pomegranate juice. A landmark clinical trial, published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, proved that pomegranate arils contain tremendous levels of punicalagens, powerful antioxidants scientifically proven to physically reverse arterial plaque, build up, and lower blood pressure. Here is a fascinating fact. In ancient Greek mythology, the pomegranate was known as the fruit of the dead. Because Persephone ate exactly 6 sweet pomegranate seeds in the underworld, she was eternally cursed to spend 6 months underground, explaining the biological origin of the cold winter season. The runner-up at number 2 is the breathtaking genetic dwarf nectarine. This is not a standard fruit tree that was merely grafted onto a small rootstock. This is a brilliant genetic mutation, creating a dense, beautiful miniature tree topping out at 5 ft, but producing abundant yields of full-sized stone fruit. You must select a heavy, substantial 15-gallon plastic pot. A large container provides the sheer physical weight needed to prevent the top-heavy, fruit-laden tree from forcefully tipping over and smashing on your patio in severe winds. Fill it with a high-quality, well-draining potting soil, heavily amended with compost and coarse sand. Purchase a bare-root, dormant tree from a specialized nursery and plant it deeply before the spring weather warms. Place the container in the absolute sunniest spot on your patio. During the spring fruit set, watering must be deep and highly consistent. If the soil dries out even once, the tree will panic and physically drop all its unripe nectarines. Feed it early in spring with a slow-release granular fruit tree fertilizer. Occurring in the brutal heat of mid to late summer, the fruit is perfectly ripe when the green skin completely transitions to a deep, blushing red, and the flesh yields slightly to gentle thumb pressure. Gently twist the fruit off the thick branch. Slice these warm, sun-ripened nectarines directly over artisanal vanilla ice cream. Agricultural research from the University of California, Davis confirms genetic dwarf stone fruit trees possess extraordinarily short internodes, meaning the dense canopy of foliage physically shades and completely protects the sensitive fruit skin from severe solar sunburn. Here is a fascinating fact. Biologically speaking, a nectarine and a peach are exactly the same botanical species. The entire sweeping difference between the two fruits relies exclusively on just one single naturally occurring recessive gene that physically controls the production of fuzzy peach skin. Taking the absolute crown at number 1 is the genetic dwarf fig tree, specifically the legendary Little Miss Figgy variety. Standard fig trees grow 30 ft tall and produce highly invasive roots that physically crush concrete pipes. But this brilliant dwarf mutation yields abundant, sticky, gourmet figs from a tiny, elegant patio pot. Because fig roots require extreme physical restriction to trigger heavy fruiting, a tight 5-gallon unglazed terracotta pot is the ultimate container. The tight space physically forces the tree to stop growing roots and start producing tremendous amounts of fruit. Fill the container with a very poor, heavy, loamy potting soil, heavily mixed with coarse sand for rapid drainage. Propagate this tree by taking a dormant hardwood cutting and sticking it directly into the damp dirt in early spring. Place the heavy pot in the most blistering, sun-scorched corner of your backyard. The watering strategy requires harsh, ruthless discipline. Allow the soil to dry out completely between deep waterings, as overwatering causes the swelling figs to physically split open and rot directly on the branch. Apply only a single handful of organic bone meal in the spring. Appearing in late summer, wait until the dark purple figs physically droop downward and become incredibly soft to the touch, often leaking a single drop of sweet honey from the bottom eye. Gently twist them off the branch. Wrap these intensely sweet, warm fruits in high-quality prosciutto and roast them for a luxury appetizer. According to a detailed botanical profile published by the University of California, fig trees are completely flowerless on the outside. The actual flowers are biologically inverted and grow entirely trapped inside the fleshy fruit cavity. Here is a fascinating fact. Because the flowers are trapped inside, ancient species of figs possess a microscopic hole explicitly designed for a specific species of female wasp to crawl inside, pollinate the fruit, and physically die, eventually being entirely enzymatically digested by the growing fig. That wraps up our list of the 15 best high-yield dwarf fruit trees for container gardening. Now, let's dive into the next 15 vegetables and herbs, the true yield champions that promise to transform your small space into a lush garden you can harvest all year round. Kicking off our list at number 15, shiso, also known as perilla. Most gardeners think they have to choose between growing something beautiful and growing something productive. Shiso refuses to make you choose. If you want a plant that brings both stunning rustic visual drama and an endless harvest to your patio, this is it. It produces massive, jagged purple and green leaves that look like they belong in a botanical garden. But make no mistake, it grows with the aggression of a weed. Because its growth rate is so explosive, it will quickly become root-bound in a small pot. You must give it at least a 3 to 5 gallon container. You can harvest the large outer leaves every single day for wraps, salads, and garnishes, and the plant simply pushes out more from the center. You won't have to wait long. Shiso is ready for its first harvest in just 40 to 60 days, and you can pick leaves continuously until the first winter frost. It's not just about aesthetics. Shiso is a nutritional powerhouse loaded with iron, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids. Use those massive leaves to wrap grilled meats, slice them into fresh salads, or steep them into an antioxidant-rich tea. Here is a fascinating fact. In traditional Japanese cuisine, shiso isn't just used for flavor. It contains a powerful natural preservative called paraldehyde, a compound that the American Chemical Society has scientifically proven to exhibit potent antimicrobial effects against foodborne pathogens that acts as an antidote to food poisoning. which is exactly why it has been paired with raw seafood for centuries. But there is one critical rule to keep the harvest going. You must strictly pinch off the flower spikes the moment they appear. If you let shiso go to seed, the plant assumes its life purpose is fulfilled and will completely stop producing leaves. Keep the soil consistently moist. Give it a light dose of organic fertilizer every month. And this plant will serve you non-stop until the deep frost. Moving right along to number 14, French tarragon. This is the culinary secret of high-end kitchens. Most people assume that to grow premium herbs, you need a traditional, perfectly tilled garden bed. In reality, growing French tarragon in a container on a spacious balcony is actually much better than putting it in the ground. French tarragon is a relentless producer, but it has one fatal weakness. It absolutely despises wet feet. Winter rot kills more tarragon than pests ever could. By putting it in a 5-gallon pot, you take complete control over its environment. You must mix a heavy handful of perlite or coarse sand into your potting soil before planting to guarantee rapid drainage. Once established, this herb is a cut-and-come-again machine. You simply snip the aromatic sprigs continuously throughout the summer. Patience is minimal here. You can start lightly snipping the aromatic leaves just 6 to 8 weeks after planting, continuing your harvest all the way through late fall. This herb is rich in manganese and iron, acting as a powerful natural digestive aid. In the kitchen, it is the irreplaceable soul of classic Béarnaise sauce, perfect for roasting with poultry, fish, or steeping to create incredible infused vinegars. Here is a fascinating fact validated by the Royal Horticultural Society, RHS. True French tarragon cannot be grown from seed because its flowers are completely sterile. That means every single French tarragon plant in the world today is a living clone propagated by root division from an ancient original plant. And here is the best part. The more you trim it, the bushier and more productive it gets. Even better, every 2 years you can simply pull it out of the container, take a sharp knife, split the root ball exactly in half, and you suddenly have double the plants. Sliding into the number 13 spot is a hidden treasure: peanuts. Most people think peanuts belong strictly in massive open agricultural fields. They assume you need acres of loose dirt to get a meaningful harvest. That is completely false. A spacious balcony or a backyard patio is the perfect place to grow them, provided you understand how the plant actually works. Peanuts do not grow on roots. They grow from pegs that drop down from the yellow flowers, reach the soil, and bury themselves into the earth to form the nut. Therefore, you do not need a deep pot. You need a wide one. A wide, shallow tub or a 15 in diameter planter is ideal. The soil must be incredibly loose, sandy, and light so the delicate pegs can penetrate easily. Do not use heavy compacted compost. Keep the soil slightly moist, but never soggy. You plant them, you wait, you water, and at the end of the season, you get the immense, deeply satisfying experience of pulling up the entire green plant to reveal a massive hidden harvest of fresh peanuts right on your patio. Unlike continuous harvest herbs, peanuts demand a long game. They require 100 to 130 frost-free days to mature, and you'll know exactly when to pull the ultimate harvest when the green leaves begin to turn yellow and wither in early autumn. Beneath that soil lies a superfood packed with dense plant protein, healthy fats, biotin, and vitamin E. You can boil them fresh for a savory snack, roast them with sea salt, or grind them into the freshest, richest peanut butter you will ever taste. Bet you didn't know this. The peanut isn't actually a nut at all. It is a legume with a brilliant survival mechanism known in botany as geocarpy, a process heavily documented by the Botanical Society of America. The plant literally buries its own fertilized flowers underground to hide its developing offspring from hungry herbivores. At number 12, we have borage. If you want a container that becomes the vibrant beating heart of your backyard ecosystem, you must plant borage. Most container crops focus only on leaves or roots. Borage is an unstoppable flowering machine. It pushes out hundreds of star-shaped, bright blue edible flowers that taste surprisingly exactly like fresh cucumber. However, borage grows a very long, aggressive taproot. You cannot cram it into a small decorative pot on a windowsill. It needs a deep 5-gallon container to truly thrive. While it is incredibly drought-tolerant and tough, to get that relentless, continuous bloom, you need to water it deeply whenever the top 2 in of soil dry out. Harvest the young leaves and fresh flowers daily for salads and summer drinks. The wait is incredibly short. You can start plucking the cucumber-flavored leaves in just 4 weeks, with that endless explosion of blue flowers following right behind at week 8. These brilliant flowers are packed with vitamin C and GLA, a rare fatty acid that dramatically reduces inflammation in the body. In fact, clinical profiles from the Mount Sinai Health System verify that GLA is scientifically proven to alleviate joint pain and severe systemic inflammation. Freeze the star-shaped flowers into ice cubes to elevate your summer cocktails, or toss the young leaves into salads for a refreshing, cooling crunch. Here is a fascinating historical fact. Ancient Roman gladiators and Celtic warriors used to steep borage flowers in their wine before going into battle, firmly believing the plant bestowed absolute courage and banished all fear. But the real magic of borage is what it does for the rest of your balcony. It will draw every bee, butterfly, and pollinator in the neighborhood straight to your containers, skyrocketing the production of every other plant around it. At number 11, we have gotu kola. Sometimes the most productive plants aren't the tallest ones. They're the ones that refuse to stop spreading. Gotu kola is a creeping medicinal powerhouse that thrives in the exact environments that would easily drown other herbs. It naturally grows in humid, swampy conditions across Asia, making it the perfect candidate for a container where you have absolute control over the water. Instead of a deep pot, use a wide, shallow bowl. Use a dense potting mix that holds moisture and never, ever let it dry out. You can even place a saucer of water directly under the pot to keep the roots constantly saturated. Keep it in the dappled shade of your larger patio plants. It hates the scorching afternoon sun. As it creeps over the edges of the pot, simply take a pair of scissors and give it a haircut. It will rapidly push out a fresh, dense carpet of new, highly nutritious leaves in a matter of days. This creeper wastes absolutely no time. From a healthy transplant, you can begin harvesting your first medicinal leaves in just 3 to 4 weeks, and it will produce year-round if protected from the cold. This plant is legendary in natural medicine, heavily studied for its high concentration of triterpenoids, which boost brain function, improve memory, and stimulate collagen production. According to pharmacological reviews by the Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation, these highly active triterpenoids, specifically asiaticoside, act as powerful neuroprotectors in clinical trials. Blend the fresh leaves into your morning green smoothies, juice them, or steep them into a brain-boosting herbal tea. Here is a fascinating fact. In Sri Lankan folklore, ancient healers discovered this plant's brain-boosting power by observing wild elephants, animals famous for their flawless memories and incredibly long lifespans, constantly seeking out and eating gotu kola in the jungle. Breaking into the top 10 is the plant that thrives on absolute neglect. Number 10. nasturtium. This is the beautiful, overflowing cascade of the container garden. Both the lily pad-like leaves and the brilliant, jewel-toned flowers are entirely edible, offering a bold, peppery kick that chefs love. This plant delivers almost instant gratification. Both the spicy leaves and the brilliant flowers are ready to be harvested in a mere 30 to 40 days, and will keep blooming aggressively right up until the frost kills them. Every part of this plant is a defender of your immune system, packed with high levels of vitamin C and lutein for eye health. Use the leaves as a spicy substitute. Garnish dishes with the flowers, or pickle the green seed pods into a fiery, poor man's caper. A fact you probably didn't know. During World War II, when black pepper was heavily rationed and nearly impossible to find, people ingeniously dried and ground the seeds of the nasturtium plant as a spicy, flawless substitute. Nasturtiums are famous for trailing beautifully down the sides of large pots or hanging baskets. But many beginners make a catastrophic mistake when growing them. They treat nasturtiums like tomatoes. They feed them. Here is the most important rule for massive production, a technique directly backed by the agricultural experts at the Cornell University Cooperative Extension. Do not fertilize nasturtiums. If you give this plant rich compost or high nitrogen fertilizer, it will produce a massive, lush jungle of green leaves and absolutely zero flowers. Plant them in poor, cheap potting soil. Put them in a 3-gallon pot and let the soil dry out slightly between waterings. The nasturtium operates on a very specific survival mechanism. The harder the soil, the poorer the nutrients, the more aggressively it blooms. Treat it poorly, and it will reward you with months of endless flowers. Down at number 9, we have horseradish. This is not a delicate herb. This is the beast in the pot. In a traditional backyard garden, planting horseradish is often a nightmare. It spreads relentlessly underground and takes over entire garden beds, becoming almost impossible to eradicate. That is exactly why you must grow it in a container. But you cannot use a normal pot. You need a massive one. A 10 to 15-gallon half-barrel is perfect. Horseradish needs deep, loose soil to push its thick, spicy taproots downward without hitting a wall. It is a heavy drinker, so you must keep the soil consistently damp during the peak heat of summer. It will grow massive, dramatic green leaves all season. Then, when winter approaches and the leaves die back, tip the barrel over. Snap off the largest, thickest roots for your kitchen. While you can sparingly snip the green leaves during the summer, the true root harvest requires patience. The massive taproots need 140 to 160 days underground and are best dug up in late autumn, right after the very first frost concentrates their fiery flavor. That intense spice comes from glucosinolates, powerful biological compounds that clear your sinuses instantly and kickstart your immune system. Grate the fresh, pungent root directly over roasted meats. Blend it into a fiery cocktail, or use it to make a devastatingly fresh, authentic wasabi substitute. Here is a fascinating fact. An intact horseradish root has absolutely no smell or spice. According to the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry, the legendary heat is only created through a violent chemical reaction between glucosinolates and an enzyme called myrosinase that occurs the exact moment the plant cells are crushed and exposed to oxygen. And the real magic? Simply take a 2-in piece of the remaining root, drop it back into the soil, and it will regrow the following spring without fail. It is a permanent, indestructible food source. Number 8. Water spinach, or kangkong. Every container gardener knows the midsummer struggle. The brutal heat arrives, the lettuce melts, the kale wilts, and the garden stops producing. That is precisely when water spinach is just waking up. This semi-aquatic plant is the absolute undisputed champion of hot, humid weather. Because it naturally grows in swamps and slow-moving rivers, you have to break the ultimate cardinal rule of container gardening. You do not need drainage. In fact, a large sealed plastic tub filled with heavy potting mix and water, essentially creating pure mud, is exactly what this plant wants. It is a voracious, unstoppable feeder. Give it a liquid nitrogen fertilizer every 2 weeks, and the hollow vines will literally explode with growth. You can cut the thick stems down to just a few inches above the soil line, and within days, they will shoot right back up. You can harvest heavy baskets of fresh greens every single week until the weather turns cold. Speed is its absolute superpower. You can make your very first massive cut just 3 to 4 weeks after planting, and the vines recover so violently fast that you can repeat that heavy harvest every 10 to 14 days. These hollow vines are an absolute goldmine of iron, calcium, and vitamin A. In the kitchen, it is the undisputed king of Asian stir-fries. Flash fry the stems with crushed garlic and oyster sauce for a legendary nutrient-dense side dish that retains an incredible crunch. A fact you probably didn't know. Water spinach grows so violently fast, up to 4 in a single day, under ideal conditions, that the USDA Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, actually heavily regulates it as an invasive noxious weed in several states because it can completely choke out wild rivers. At number 7, we have lovage. Imagine the sharp, savory flavor of celery, but amplified, growing on a plant that simply refuses to quit. Lovage is a towering architectural giant of an herb. It can easily reach 5 to 6 feet tall, making it a stunning visual centerpiece for a spacious balcony. Because of its massive size and incredibly deep roots, a flimsy plastic pot will not work. You need a heavy 10 to 15-gallon container, so a strong gust of wind doesn't blow the entire plant over. Lovage loves rich, loamy soil, so you must mix in plenty of compost before planting. It is also incredibly cold hardy, often surviving harsh winters right in the pot. The best part? You only need one single plant. You snip the strong, hollow stems and leaves continuously for soups, broths, and stews. You can start snipping the outer stalks of a young transplant in just 4 to 6 weeks. From that moment on, it is a relentless producer from early spring all the way to the late autumn frost. Lovage is loaded with B vitamins and quercetin, acting as a powerful natural diuretic to flush toxins from your body. Because the flavor is so intense, a single hollow stem can transform a bland potato soup or a hearty winter stew into a culinary masterpiece. Here is a fascinating fact documented in the historical archives of the Herb Society of America. The hollow stems of lovage are so sturdy and flavorful that ancient Roman travelers would cut them and use them as natural edible drinking straws to infuse their water and wine on long journeys. Every time you cut it back, it responds by pushing out lush, tender new growth from the base. It is the ultimate cut and come again perennial. Coming in at number 6, taro, also known as colocasia. If you have a spacious backyard patio and you want to turn it into a high-calorie food forest, this is your plant. Taro produces massive, dramatic elephant ear leaves that instantly give your garden a lush, tropical jungle vibe. But while the leaves look beautiful above ground, below the soil, the plant is silently producing a dense, starchy harvest. Taro loves water. It demands massive containers. Think a 15 or 20-gallon tub. In fact, to keep it happy, you can place the heavy pot inside a larger saucer, constantly filled with water to ensure the roots never dry out. It is an incredibly heavy feeder. You must mix in a slow-release organic fertilizer at planting and top dress with thick compost mid-season. The beauty of container taro is its dual harvest. You can continuously harvest the young, unfurling outer stalks for cooking throughout the entire summer, while the massive tubers continue to swell beneath the soil for a massive autumn harvest. This plant operates on a brilliant dual timeline. You can start harvesting the young outer stalks continuously after just 8 weeks, while the survival tubers quietly swell underground, requiring a full 7 to 8 months before the grand late autumn harvest. This produces a vital survival crop, dense tubers packed with complex carbohydrates, dietary fiber, vitamin E, and potassium. But a critical warning: taro leaves and tubers contain calcium oxalate crystals and must be cooked thoroughly before eating. Once boiled or roasted, the tubers become a creamy, nutty staple, while the massive leaves can be steamed to wrap savory meat. Here is a fascinating fact. Taro is widely considered by archaeologists to be one of the oldest cultivated crops in human history. According to UNESCO archaeological data from the Cook Swamp site in Papua New Guinea, researchers found definitive evidence that it has been successfully grown and consumed for over 10,000 years, and famously used to fuel ancient Polynesian voyagers across the Pacific Ocean. At number 5, we have OCA, the New Zealand yam. This is the autumn surprise of the container garden. While most vegetables are dying back and giving up as the days get shorter, OCA is just getting ready to perform. The plant itself is gorgeous, forming a dense bush of clover-like leaves and bright red stems. But the real prize lies underground. Incredibly crisp, tangy, neon-colored tubers. OCA only begins to form these underground tubers when the daylight hours drop significantly in late autumn, meaning it needs a very long growing season. A 7 to 10 gallon heavy-duty grow bag is perfect. The secret to a massive overflowing harvest is a technique called hilling. Just like potatoes, as the OCA plant grows taller, you must continuously add more soil to the container, burying the lower stems. Keep the soil moist but well drained. Protect the leaves from the very first light frosts, and you will dump out a literal mountain of vibrant, jewel-like tubers in early winter. Patience is mandatory for this autumn surprise. OCA requires a long 6 to 8 month growing season, and you absolutely cannot harvest until the daylight hours drop significantly in late autumn or early winter, which is the exact trigger for the tubers to form. OCA is a nutritional anomaly, a low-calorie carbohydrate loaded with vitamin C, potassium, and iron. Unlike potatoes, you don't even have to cook OCA. Slice the vibrant tubers raw into salads for a lemony, apple-like crunch, or roast them whole until they become sweet and savory. A fact you probably didn't know: in its native Andes Mountains, indigenous farmers have a brilliant trick, which was thoroughly documented in the botanical report Lost Crops of the Incas by the National Research Council. After harvesting, they leave the OCA tubers out in the freezing, high-altitude sunlight for a few days, which magically converts the plant's natural organic acids into pure, sweet sugar. Number 4. Yakan, the Bolivian sunroot. Prepare to be absolutely shocked by how much food a single pot can produce. Yakan is a towering giant that yields massive, sweet, crunchy tubers that taste like a refreshing cross between an apple and a watermelon. Because this plant will easily reach 5 to 6 ft tall with massive, velvet-like leaves, a standard pot is useless. You need a massive 15 to 20 gallon container or a heavy-duty fabric grow bag. It requires incredibly rich, loamy soil and a tremendous amount of water. During the blazing summer months, those massive leaves will transpire water at an astonishing rate, so daily deep watering is absolutely non-negotiable. If it dries out, the yield plummets. But if you keep it fed and watered, the payoff is staggering. At the end of the season, when the top finally dies back from the frost, one single pot can easily yield 10 to 20 lb of sweet, juicy roots. This giant plays the long game. It needs a full 6 to 7 months of growth. And the golden rule is to wait until the first heavy frost completely kills the top velvet leaves. That is your exact signal to dig up the massive winter harvest. Yacon is a literal miracle for your metabolism. The massive, crunchy tubers are packed with inulin, a prebiotic fiber that tastes sweet but has a near-zero glycemic index, meaning it won't spike your blood sugar, a mechanism scientifically validated by clinical studies from the National Institutes of Health. Slice the juicy roots raw into fruit salads. Juice them for a naturally sweet drink, or roast them for a diet-friendly dessert. A fact you probably didn't know. The ancient Incas called yacon the water root. Because the tubers are up to 90% water, indigenous messengers running across the arid Andes Mountains would dig them up purely to quench their thirst. At number 3, we have stevia. Why buy chemically processed sweeteners when you can grow a continuous natural sugar factory right on your balcony? Stevia leaves are incredibly sweet, and the plant actually thrives in container life. A 3 to 5 gallon pot is perfectly sufficient for a massive harvest. But stevia requires a delicate watering balance. It hates drying out and wilts quickly, but its roots will rapidly rot in completely soggy soil. You must use a premium well-draining potting mix, and water it only when the top inch of soil feels dry to the touch. To get a relentless, continuous harvest, you must be ruthless. You must continuously pinch off the growing tips. This stops the plant from getting tall, spindly, and flowering, forcing it to branch out into a dense, highly productive shrub. Snip the leaves, dry them, crush them, and you have an endless supply of natural sweetness all season long. Your natural sugar factory is operational almost immediately. You can start picking sweet leaves in 40 to 60 days, though the absolute peak sweetness occurs in late summer, right before the plant attempts to flower. The leaves contain steviol glycosides, compounds up to 300 times sweeter than sugar, but with absolutely 0 calories and 0 impact on your blood sugar. The European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, confirms that because the human body lacks the enzymes to break down these molecules, they pass through completely unabsorbed. You can use this fine powder as an endless natural way to sweeten your coffee or tea. Here is a fascinating fact. Long before it became a modern diet trend, the Guarani people of South America used stevia for over 1,500 years, calling it sweet herb, and using it specifically to balance the bitter taste of their traditional medicinal teas. The runner-up at number 2 is longevity spinach. It doesn't just grow, it conquers. This sprawling, vining plant is a medicinal powerhouse that seems completely and totally immune to pests, diseases, and harsh conditions. In a spacious balcony setting, you can plant it in a 5-gallon hanging basket and let it cascade beautifully, or give it a tall trellis to climb. It prefers bright indirect light rather than scorching full afternoon sun. It earned its name for a reason. Scientifically proven to lower blood sugar, reduce cholesterol, and fight inflammation. A comprehensive pharmacological review published in the journal Frontiers in Pharmacology specifically confirms that its leaves possess potent anti-diabetic and anti-hypertensive properties that actively mimic insulin. You can toss these leaves raw into fresh salads, blend them into detox green smoothies, or flash fry them with crushed garlic for a nutrient-dense side dish. Here is a fascinating fact. For centuries, the exact location and cultivation methods of longevity spinach were closely guarded secrets among traditional herbalists in Asia, considered too valuable of a life-extending medicine to share with the general public. The magic of longevity spinach is its recovery speed. The more you harvest the crisp, slightly fleshy leaves, the more aggressively it branches out to replace them. And if you ever want more plants, it is ridiculously easy to propagate. Simply snap off a stem, strip the bottom leaves, and stick it directly into damp potting soil. It roots almost instantly. From a simple cutting to your first harvest takes an astonishingly short 3 to 4 weeks. After that, it is a daily harvest machine that will produce 365 days a year if you protect it from winter temperatures. You can harvest from this plant every single day, and it will never show signs of stopping. And finally, taking the absolute crown at number 1, Cuban oregano, also known as Mexican mint. If there is one plant that could survive the end of the world in a plastic pot, this is it. Cuban oregano is not a true oregano. It is a stunning semi-succulent with thick, velvety, incredibly aromatic leaves that carry the intense, punchy flavor of oregano, thyme, and mint all rolled into one. This plant is practically indestructible. It demands a container. A 3 to 5 gallon pot is ideal because it absolutely requires sandy, cactus-like soil with supreme drainage. It laughs at heat waves. It thrives on utter neglect. You can go on vacation, forget to water it for a week in the blazing sun, and its thick leaves will simply hold the moisture it needs to survive. The velvet leaves are loaded with vitamins A and C and have been used for centuries as a traditional medicinal remedy to cure sore throats and chest coughs. Crush the thick leaves into intense sauces, use them as a dominant marinade for pork and poultry, or steep them into a powerful medicinal tea. 99% of people don't know this fact. Despite its famous name, Cuban oregano is entirely a lie. As officially verified by the botanists at the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, it is not an oregano, and it does not originate from Cuba. It is actually a highly evolved member of the mint family, originally hailing from the rugged terrains of southern Africa. To harvest, you don't even need scissors. Just snap off the fleshy branches with your fingers. The plant immediately heals the wound and shoots out 2 new branches in its place. Once established from a cutting, it is ready to harvest in as little as 4 weeks. Because it is an evergreen perennial in warm climates, it ignores the seasons completely, giving you a relentless harvest every single month of the year. It is the undisputed king of the continuous harvest, a flawless, beautiful, unstoppable food source that will transform your balcony into an endless supply of flavor. If this guide has changed the way you look at your patio or backyard, please subscribe to our channel and like this video. We are uncovering the agricultural secrets they tried to bury. Plant your future today. The next harvest of knowledge will be ready soon.